Bioshock Close to the Sun is an exploration style game with some puzzle elements and the odd horror element tossed in for good effect. It's the first game from developers Storm in a Teacup to see a major release, but at the time of this review, it was only available on the Epic Games Store. The game places you in the shoes of Rose Archer, a journalist who receives a letter from her sister Ada, a gifted mathematician aboard a giant research vessel in the ocean called the Helios. The Helios was built as a sort of floating independent free state where governments couldn't interfere with all their notions of laws and rights and other bollocks like that. So it's not like the Rapture from Bioshock at all, which was set in an underwater free state where governments couldn't interfere with all their notions and rights and... yeah. The Helios was built by none other than Nikola Tesla. Yep, that Nikola Tesla. For you see, Close to the Sun takes place in an alternative universe where, rather than piss around trying to get one over on Thomas Edison all the time, Tesla decided fuck bitches, get money, and set up the Wardenclyffe Consortium. And rather than dying as a pauper as he did in real life, he went full Tony Stark and built himself a floating city where he could do pretty much whatever the fuck he wanted. So you see, it's totally different from Bioshock, where Andrew Ryan used his billions to fund himself an underwater city where his research could continue unfettered by regulations. In Close to the Sun, it's Tesla building himself a floating city where his research could continue unfettered by regulations. Totally different. Right, don't worry, I'm gonna stop banging on about the similarities between this and Bioshock. Firstly, because it could go on for ages and I want to talk about the actual game. And secondly, because the similarities are mostly cosmetic. When the actual game itself starts proper, they end. As Rose, your task is to navigate through the labyrinth city ship that is the Helios, trying to piece together what went on, where your sister is and how to get to her, and very occasionally trying not to die by running away from various monsters and the one lone psycho.
What have you got
So
yourself
it's Bioshock
into,
if it were developed by fractional games rather than irrational.
Great.
There's also ghosts in here as well, added purely for atmosphere and given a painfully thin excuse for existing with the we're all working on time stuff excuse. The majority of the game's information is conveyed through the various notes littered throughout the levels, and while these are all very well written, a lot are very easy to miss, and walking around picking them all up and reading them can get really tedious. Add in all these stupid collectibles for each level added purely for the 100%ers, and you've got a game that makes getting into it a bit of a slog. While I did promise to stop banging on about Close to the Sun's similarities to Bioshock, I'm going to point out one of its main differences, in that there's no combat. Rose is the timid lamb of a woman, and as such is easy prey for anything on the ship. Luckily for her, there's not much on the ship to cause her harm. Unluckily for you, the player, this means your gameplay is going to be quite short of excitement. Extra unluckily for you, the player, the exploration will be hampered by an incredibly poor control scheme. Rose moves like she's wading through treacle, the zoom doesn't really help, and the jump is utterly useless. And I really mean that. It's totally useless. There's no point at which you have to jump over anything of your own volition. When you have to scale an obstacle, it's through a button prompt, not a jump. There's no crouch, although again, you'll only have to crouch during a sequence and there'll be a button prompt. And even then, it's only once. So you won't be needing it to avoid any enemies, because there aren't many. On the rare occasion you do encounter an enemy, it's in the form of a quasi-quick-time event, where you run down a set path, jumping obstacles and making decisions on which turn to take. Make the right one, you live. Wrong, and you die, and you're treated to an overlong, unskippable, gruesome death sequence. It doesn't really help that these sections are painfully obviously marked, so the only way you'll be shocked by them is if you're terminally short in awareness. So the game is a basic exploration one with some semi-scripted horror elements. Why bother with it then? Well, there's not a whole lot to recommend this game, but at least this'll bring me to one positive: the looks. The game is positively gorgeous. The art style is pure classical steampunk and the scene transitions are silky. The levels all differ wildly from one another and yet still seem perfectly plausible. What Storm and a Teacup have managed to wrangle out of the Unreal Engine is remarkable. The art deco design of everything is spot on and the environments really help to create a dark and foreboding atmosphere. Which is great because it sure isn't getting any help from the fucking gameplay or the writing. Thankfully, the spare story writing is offset somewhat by the excellent voice acting, in particular that of Rose herself. It's fantastic, and at no point was I made aware that this is just some actor in a booth reading off lines. Emily Moment has delivered a really great performance, and it really helped me get invested in the character.
Yeah. This door won't Open!
Easy there, champ. Try putting your considerable weight behind it.
Yeah. Oh my god!
What's going on?
They're in pieces, Ada!
Shit.
Get me out! How do I get out?
Rose! Rose! It's gonna be okay. Rose, listen to me. You're having a panic attack. Just focus on my voice, Rose. Close your eyes and just focus on my voice. Breathe with me.
Actually, the entire voice cast are really quite good, which is a rarity in and of itself.
1-4 now.
Special mention to Yannick Archer for managing to come up with a version of Nikola Tesla that makes him sound like an actual human. Almost every portrayal of Tesla I've ever seen has made him sound like a combination of Borat and the Count from the Muppets. Gameplay wise, there's no combat as we stated before, but there are puzzles. Well, not many of them to be honest, and for the ship supposedly designed to house the best and the brightest, what little puzzles there are all very simple. In fact, I was stuck on one for half an hour longer than I should have been due to the fact that I was overthinking the solution and just didn't want to go with the first answer that popped into my head. The story and writing doesn't help things much either. You're just given objectives which amount to find this, then go here, but you're never fully sure why you're doing half the stuff you're doing. The sense of confusion is paramount here. Plus, the ending is as abrupt as one as you'll find, leaving it very obvious that it's going to be a sequel, or at the very least, some DLC. Now, while leaving the story open at the end isn't in and of itself a poor move, here, it just seems like they went, nah, fuck it, this is all they'll need, we'll pick it up next year. It's a very unfulfilling ending to say the least. There's lots left over, and a good ending really could have saved this game. There are some good elements here, however, that really should have been mined further. There's rooms filled with codes and ciphers that I spent hours going through because they were really interesting, until I realised that they don't crop up at all anywhere else except for an Easter egg. It was a really good opportunity to create some seriously challenging puzzles, but it was just dropped. There's also a fantastic hidden subtext to some of the notes that the knife-wielding nutcase chasing you around was the one responsible for the Jack the Ripper killings, but again, it's timidly brought up in the notes, scattered around, and then dropped without a thought. It's really disappointing that such brilliant little elements weren't utilised a lot better. The gameplay clocks in at roughly 5 to 6 hours if you're any good, and will probably stay with you for not much longer than that after you're done. With so much wasted potential that's so obviously saving itself for a second outing, this isn't the game I'd be recommending until I know more about what that second outing would entail. If you can pick this up for cheap and you like the look of it, then go ahead. Keep your expectations low, and who knows, you just might enjoy yourself.